Hi, I'd like to talk about just a nice little book by a guy named Bernard Williams called Morality. It's not some historically famous book or anything. It's even used as a textbook in some ethics classes, although it's kind of a weird. It's not exactly a normal textbook. Um, uh, and I want to talk about it in these days. Um, uh, I don't know if you heard that guy Alex Jones. He's got some kind of whacked out video page or something, and he says if worse comes to worse, he's gonna eat his neighbors. So he's stocking up on guns. He's gonna eat his neighbors, and I think he thinks that when push comes to shove, we're gonna be what we really are, and we're gonna do what we got to do to save ourselves. What this reminds me of, I think, is The Lord of the Flies. I actually never read that book, but I heard about it, and I know a lot of people have read it. William Golding, and the kids are stranded on a desert island or something, and all heck breaks loose, and they turn into barbarians. Recently, I saw a story on the internet here. I'm sitting at home watching the internet, and turns out that's not how people really are in times of deprivation. There was this story of these Australian kids that spent a year on a desert island. They got shipwrecked themselves, and things were much better. So you've got this standard view, you've got this critique of this view. The interesting thing is in philosophy, one thing you want to do, or one thing that is often done, is you go for a deeper critique. So what do the critiques of The Lord of the Flies and this other one have in common? Well, they both say, look, if you want to find out what human beings are like, put them in a situation of deprivation, and then we'll find out what they're really like, and we just disagree about what they're really like. Interesting thing about what Bernard Williams says in this book, and I'm just thinking right now, this is a very short book, and I'm in the very first chapter. It's called The Amoralist. He points out, if I were looking to find out what human beings were really like, I wouldn't look at people who have spent 2 weeks in a lifeboat. That if I were trying to find out what their physical condition were like, I wouldn't look at people who have spent 2 weeks in a lifeboat. Why would I think that? I would find out about what their moral condition is really like by looking at what the moral condition of human beings is really like by looking at human beings who have been sitting in a lifeboat for 2 weeks. If you want to know what human beings are really like, kind of look at what they're actually like in normal circumstances for human beings. So there's interesting thing here. Another interesting thing, just thinking about this first chapter, if you got time to be thinking in these days, if we're trying to think about the basis of morality, what would it take to convince somebody who didn't already have a moral and kind of buy into the morality game? What would it take to argue this person into the morality game? It's famously pointed out by a philosopher, Hume, that you can't derive moral oughts from the way things are. So if I start trying to argue from how things are in the world to how things ought to be, can't really do that. What Williams interestingly does in this little section on the amoralist is he takes this person who demands to be argued from how things are and demands to be argued into the morality game, and he asks us to think about, well, what kind of person would that be? We're all of us pretty much in the morality game, so what would we take away from the kind of beings we are to get to the kind of person we have to argue into the morality game? And it's kind of a surprising answer. So if you have a chance to look at this book, look at this little chapter on the amoralist, you might find it interesting, and you might find it encouraging in these times when you got people like Alex Jones saying, oh, well, the smart money is to get a bunch of guns and eat my neighbors if I need to. It'd be nice if we didn't have to think that. I don't think we do have to think that. Anyway, there's a book. Morality by Bernard Williams. Have a good rest of the coronavirus term.